everybody! Welcome to the Jayda InStitches show. I can't believe another year has almost completely closed on us, but here we are, it's the end of 2019, and today we're adding the final applique to our 2019 folk art calendar blanket. Now we have a border tutorial coming very soon, but today is the last official applique. We're taking one last trip down to the seaside and we're going to add a whale to the water section of our blanket. Now I've added two. You can add one, you can add an entire pod if you like, but this little guy doesn't take up very much yarn, and I think he's a really sweet little animal addition to the blanket. So let's grab our hooks, grab our yarn, we'll head on over to the craft table, and we will stitch up the final applique in our 2019 folk art calendar blanket together. In order to make our little whale applique, you need a very small amount of whale color. I've made one in gray here, so you can see what it looks like in gray. And I'm also going to use a light blue today, but you do want a little tiny bit of white to just give his belly a bit of a lighter color and a tiny amount of black for his eye. So this is all acrylic, worsted weight, size 4 yarn, the same yarn I've been using all along for the rest of my blanket. You want a pair of scissors, a yarn needle, and the same hook we've been using all along. This is a 5.5 millimeter, also known as an I or a 9 in the US, a size 5 in the UK. And once you've got all that together, we can get started. Please visit our shop and purchase a pattern. It helps support our show, and we'll put a link to our shop in the description box down below. We're going to make the entire part of our whale, which is all in this case gray, in one piece. And we're going to start by making something of a teardrop or a leaf shape. So grab your whale color and your hook and we'll get started. We're going to begin with a slip knot. And we're going to chain 9. And here we go. We're going to skip the first chain from the hook and single crochet into the second chain from the hook. We're going to single crochet into the next chain. Half double crochet into each of the next 2 chains. And double crochet into each of the next 3 chains. That leaves us with 1 chain at the end, this chain right here, and into that chain you're going to double crochet 5 times. Once you've double crocheted 5 times into that last chain, we're going to turn our work so that we're now working back across the bottom of our foundation chain row, and we're going to repeat the same pattern but in reverse. So into the next stitch or the next chain, which is this one right here, you're going to double crochet, and I'm just going to work over top of my short tail. And you're going to double crochet into each of the next 2 chains. We're going to half double crochet into each of the next 2 chains. And into the last 2, these 2 right here, you're going to single crochet. So you're basically working the pattern in reverse. And that brings us right back to the end. So now we're going to chain 1, and we're going to turn our work so that we're working back across the top of all of those stitches we worked on the top or the right side of our foundation chain. So we're just kind of going around in a circular fashion. Into the next 2 stitches, you're going to single crochet. half double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, and double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. All right, so far we've got single, single, half, half, double, double, double. So that brings us up to our curve. Into each of these 5 stitches, we're going to work 2 double crochet. So 2 double crochet into each of the next 5 stitches, and that brings us around the bend. Once you've worked 2 double crochet into each of those 5 stitches going around the bend, we are continuing with that little sort of pattern in reverse. So we're going to double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches, half double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, and single crochet into the next 2 stitches. And that brings us back to the end. There's our little slip stitch, or our chain 1. We're actually going to slip stitch into that chain 1, and that will bring us right to the very kind of bottom of our little teardrop shape. So that's the body of our whale, and now we want to make a little tail. So from here we're going to chain 9. And once you have 9 chains, we're going to start the first section of his tail. So we're going to skip over the first chain from the hook and slip stitch into the next chain, single crochet into the next chain, half double crochet into the next chain, single crochet into the next chain, and slip stitch into the next chain. So you have something that looks like that. That will leave you with 3 unused chains. You're going to just ignore these for a little while, and we're going to make the other section of his little tail. So we're going to chain 5. We've got 5 chains. We're going to skip the first chain, slip stitch into the second chain from the hook, single crochet into the next chain, half double crochet into the next chain, and then single crochet into the last chain. And then where we left from, so right where we chained away from into this space right here, that should be looking a little big. It's the end of the other tail. You're just going to slip stitch right in there. So both tail sections are anchored in the same chain. So you've got something that looks like that. And now we're just going to finish off his tail. So we're going to slip stitch into the next chain, single crochet into the next chain, and half double crochet into the last chain, and that chain sort of sits right up against the body of our whale. We're going to skip this stitch right here and just join with a slip stitch to the stitch 1 up from there, and that just lets the body of the tail lean up against the body of the whale. And there's our little whale shape. So you're going to leave yourself a nice long tail of yarn, because that's what you're going to sew it down to your blanket with. And then fasten off. Make sure that's nice and tight. And then grab your white yarn. We're just going to put a little bit of a belly on him. We're going to take our white yarn and make a slip knot. And here's where we're going to attach it. So we take our whale. This is the very top point, or the end point of the largest part of his body. We're going to count 1, 2, 3. So 3 stitches down from that middle end stitch. We're going to join our yarn with a slip stitch in that chain. And then we're going to single crochet into the next chain. So I'm going to weave in my little tail later. So we're not single crocheting or anything into the stitch we joined in. We're just going to slip stitch to join and then work into the next few stitches. So we're just going to single crochet our way along the bottom of the belly of our whale. And the last single crochet is going to be right at the very end of the body where the body meets the tail. And then you just want to slip stitch into the next couple of stitches. So one of these is a slip stitch. So slip stitch into there and then just slip stitch into the bottom chain of the tail. So you're just bringing a little bit of that white up into the tail. That's it. It's just a little white detail. You can fasten off. You don't need a whole lot of tail here, but leave some so that you can just sew down that little bottom bit of your whale when it comes time to add it to the blanket. And if you have your little tail showing, just weave it in across the back. Next, we want to add a little eye just sort of to the bottom of the big round part of his body. So just somewhere down here. You want to take a little bit of black yarn and thread up your yarn needle and bring it from back to front, pretty much where you want your little eye to sit. Leave a little bit of tail out the back. You can sort of put your finger on it if that helps. And then we're just going to make a couple of little straight stitches over top of one little tiny piece of a crochet stitch. And we're just going to run the yarn back and forth through those two little spaces a couple of times. Just enough to get a little bit of an eye shape. There we go. I think 3 times is enough. Then you just take the two ends, knot them together on the underside or the wrong side of your whale. And you can trim any excess. Don't worry about weaving these ends in because they're just going to be underneath your whale body when you sew it down. And that's it. There's our little whale. Let's sew him onto our blanket. All right, I've got my blanket. I've got it folded so that I can see the big blue part of the ocean here between my sailboat and my lighthouse. Now you can put in as many of these whales as you feel you want to. If you just want to add one, that's fine. You can sort of sit them down near the bottom, out in the middle. You can add 2, 3. You can make a whole school of whales if you want to, or I suppose that would be a pod of whales. And of course, if you want to, you can do them in different colors because it's a folk art blanket. So you can make them any color you want. Just decide where you want them placed. Pin them into place if you feel it's necessary, and then grab your yarn needle and you can start sewing them down. I'm going to sew down the white belly part of our whale here first. So I'm just threading up the white part of the yarn, and I'm doing the same kind of technique that we've done before. You grab a piece of a stitch from the blanket and then you sew through the corresponding edge stitch of the applique. And you're just going to steadily work away at that all the way along the underside of our little whale's belly. Once you sew the whole white section of his belly down, you can just make a tiny little knot at the end, either on the blanket or on the applique itself. Make it nice and tight and small, and then you can weave the tail in underneath some of those white stitches. Trim any excess. Next, we're going to thread up the long tail left behind on the colored part of our whale, and we fastened off up top. So what we want to do is bring our yarn underneath the whale to right at the edge where the belly sort of starts. So don't pull too tightly, but just bring your yarn underneath your whale. And then we're going to turn his tail up a little bit because we want it to sort of look like it's splashing. You're just going to sew all the way around your entire whale body, and your last stitch will be here because we've already sewn down the belly. Make a little knot and weave in your tails underneath some of those blue stitches on your whale. And once you've got them sewn down and all your tails are woven in, you can put on one more or leave it at one or do a whole pod like I said. And that's it. That's the last applique for our 2019 folk art calendar blanket. I love whales. I think they're so cute. I love that we've been able to add a sea creature to the blanket, and I hope you all enjoyed making that along with us. We will see you very shortly for the border edition to our folk art calendar blanket that'll wrap things up, and we're going to have that out to you really soon so that any of you giving this away as a gift this year will have it done in time. We'll see you very soon here on the Jayda InStitches show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, and have a cozy week. Bye everybody!
Hi everyone, this is Mama InStitches. Thank you for watching. Here are a few other videos you might enjoy. Don't forget to subscribe, and you can also click the like button and the bell. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.